Intellectual property is a concept that is really misunderstood. In its basic form, intellectual property is anything from a patent, a trademark, a copyright, or a trade secret. It's basically your genius expressed in some way. Unfortunately, many people think they don't have intellectual property if they don't have a technology company or they don't have a product that they're going to patent. So first, every business has some sort of intellectual property, even if you don't have a patent. Great example is a software company that might be putting together all different pieces of software to create a unique approach or process. They still have intellectual property. It's a secret, it's a know-how, it's their process. That is intellectual property. You can be in any kind of business, and as long as you have a name, you're going to need to protect that name. You might have a logo. So you don't have to have a patent in order to have intellectual property. Another really important concept is just because you pay somebody to create something for you. Great example would be a video. If I was paying for a video to be created for my company, unless it specifically states in the contract that I own all the rights to that video, including the original footage and everything, I might not be able to have the original files, redo that video. I might not own the intellectual property associated with the video, even though I paid the videographer. So it's really, really important to understand that when you hire contractors to work for you, they don't necessarily give you the intellectual property that they create. Another concept is you shouldn't sit on your intellectual property and try to save a little bit of money by not going and filing. You want to make sure that if you've come up with a really neat name for example, for your restaurant, and you're out there printing menus and developing a sign and creating this whole brand, you need to make sure that, first of all, somebody else doesn't already have that name, and second of all, you need to either use it or you need to protect it while you're spending all this money. There's a restaurant in Phoenix that didn't go out and trademark their name, and what they ended up doing was spending thousands of dollars on marketing materials only to find out that another restaurant opened up with a similar name. So you don't want to wait until it's too late. The last misconception about intellectual property is in the software industry. There's a lot of open source code out there. There is a whole movement of Copyleft, which means that there are pieces of code that if you use them in your product, it means you can no longer commercialize or sell whatever you've created. So you have to be very, very careful about what open source code you use in your product. Often it's really simple. You just have to read the license and the permission to use, and then you make sure that whatever they've asked you to do, you incorporate it into your code and that you're giving people credit for the work that they've created. Because if you put that code in, it's almost like putting a little virus in your code, and then when you go to either raise money or sell your company, you're going to have to go back through and change out all of those libraries and all of that code that you don't necessarily have the right to use. So hopefully that helped with some of your concerns around intellectual property. IP is a very confusing and often scary subject, so make sure if you do have questions around intellectual property that you consult a professional.